join us. Last month, we covered all things meal planning. And so today we're going to focus on how to structure our meals and snacks, kind of looking more closely at our meal composition today. Oops. Are you able to navigate? Oh, there we go. Okay. So today we're going to cover four main things. The first is understanding what normal eating is. Um, so while there's no such thing as normal when it comes to maybe the types of food that we eat, sometimes there are questions around, am I eating enough or am I eating too much? And that's something that we'll address today. The second thing is creating balanced breakfast with some ideas, as well as creating some balanced meals for lunches and dinners, again, with some ideas and inspiration. And then lastly, creating balanced snacks with some ideas there too. So, what is normal eating? And no pressure, but feel free to share your thoughts
Moses.
in the chat here, or just maybe think to yourself, like maybe what comes to mind when you think about what normal eating means. Do particular foods come to mind? Do meal structures come to mind? And I know this can be maybe a tough question to answer. It could bring up even more questions like, are we talking about normal for me, normal for most people? Am I normal? And hopefully we're not getting that dark, but So, what is normal eating? In the context of this presentation, we are talking about listening to our body. So, eating when we're hungry, stopping when we feel comfortably full, trusting our hunger fullness cues, and recognizing hunger simply as just another physiological cue. So, when we really have to use the bathroom, for instance, we're not necessarily ignoring that cue and telling our body, hey, body, not now. No, like we're going to go pee. So sometimes we're taught that hunger is something we can ignore or might even feel embarrassed by, especially if we feel like we've just eaten something, when really it's just a way that the body is expressing a need. Normal eating is also balanced and flexible, so choosing enjoyable foods, mixing it up, and allowing ourselves to vary our intake and food choices without those rigid rules or feelings of guilt. And normal eating should also be sustainable. So, essentially, letting food be unimportant, but not necessarily all consuming part of our life, being able to find that balance between nourishing ourselves and overall food enjoyment. Oh, and last thing I'll say here too, why is normal eating important? So we do know that normal eating supports our blood sugar balance. So regular eating can help to stabilize our energy, our mood, and concentration just by preventing those blood sugar spikes and subsequent crashes. We know that it can help promote stable hunger cues. So consistent nourishment strengthens our body's natural hunger fullness signals. So when we're able to listen consistently to those signals and respond, aka eating when we're hungry, stopping when we're full, the body can kind of better relax, regulate energy efficiently, and support both our physical and mental performance. It also helps to improve food and body trust. So, finding what our own individual food and body needs are helps us to create that consistency. So, for instance, when the body knows it will be fed regularly and adequately, it doesn't necessarily need to overreact with these intense food cravings, preoccupation with food, or urgency around eating. And over time, this leads to steadier energy, more reliable signals, and then fewer swings between kind of food restriction and overeating. And then, as this image just kind of shows us, we want to try to eat throughout our day. If we're able to, aiming to eat a meal or a snack every 3 to 4 hours to help maintain our energy levels is ideal. This is because having 3 to 5 eating opportunities, for example, in a day versus just 1 to 2 just makes it a lot easier to make sure our nutrition needs are being met, since it can be really challenging to squeeze in all of our nutrition needs into just one meal and a couple of snacks during the day, for example. All right, and for those of you who joined our first presentation, this image might look a little familiar, but again, just wanted to pause and recognize that while we are talking about all things balanced eating today, I know that that can automatically stir up these images in our mind about these beautifully curated, kind of rainbow-soaked meals that we might come across on social media. And it's truly okay if not all our food looks immaculate, because let's be honest with ourselves, that takes a lot of time, and our time is incredibly valuable. So it is okay to simplify our meals. It's okay to take shortcuts when it comes to cooking because this can let us be more present in our lives when it comes to spending time with loved ones, in our hobbies, or studying, dating, that sort of thing. And cooking can absolutely be a form of self-care or something that we can let ourselves enjoy. But if it's not, or if at this point in life time feels so precious that cooking has maybe felt like a bit of a chore lately, that's okay too. Maybe later on in life we'll have more time and resources to dedicate to cooking from scratch or making things look pretty. Okay. So jumping into our first meal of the day for most, we've got breakfast. So first, I just want to emphasize that breakfast does not need to be traditional breakfast foods. It can be anything that you like. It can be leftovers from dinner from the night before or whatever is accessible to you. Generally, though, we want all of our meals, not just breakfast, but to have at least one serving from each of the categories listed here. So we've got carbohydrate, protein, and fat. Bonus, of course, if we can squeeze in a fruit or a vegetable here too, but we'll focus more on those later. And I just wanted to take a second to acknowledge this might sound a little overwhelming or feel hard to some of you. Breakfast can be a difficult meal to start incorporating at first if you're not used to it. But again, this is just kind of another way to maybe meet some of our health goals, whether that be adding in more fiber in our day, adding in more color or fruits and veggies, or more protein, just because it's a lot easier, again, to meet those goals when we're spreading our intake out throughout our day. And we'll also start reviewing some easy, and I promise these are easy ideas to start with in the next few slides. So we've all probably heard that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. While that catchphrase was likely used as more of a marketing tactic for some of our favorite cereal brands, there are still a lot of benefits to prioritizing breakfast. Breakfast essentially just helps us to start the day with a full tank after we just spent the night fasting or sleeping. It can help set us up for more energy throughout the day so we're not necessarily running on fumes by the afternoon and reaching kind of that hangry place, which we're probably all familiar with, I'm sure. So when we kind of reach that state, we might be more likely to make those more impulsive food choices because that decision fatigue might feel more intense if we're underfueled. There's also some research that indicates that those who incorporate a breakfast meal containing a good source of fiber, adequate protein, and a heart healthy fat actually have more stable blood sugar levels later on in the day. So, going through each of these categories in a little more detail, we've got our carbohydrates. So, prioritizing a fiber rich carb in the morning can really help us feel fuller and more satisfied for a longer period of time. And our carb source can come from any of the foods listed here. So, we've got rolled or steel cut oats, we've got potatoes, whole grain breads or bagels. We've also got rice, tortillas, beans, steam buns, soup dumplings, or other noodle type foods. We've also got fruit or vegetables on this list. And just a quick note here on fruit and veggies. So, with fruit being used as a carb in place of a more conventional carb like whole grain bread or oatmeal, for instance, I definitely recommend pairing it with a protein and a fat to make sure you're able to feel, again, more full and more satisfied for a longer period since it is a lower calorie option. And we'll touch on this in a bit more detail later. But protein and fat, as well as fiber, tend to be the components that the body needs to work a little harder to break down, which again is kind of what brings us that satisfied feeling after meals. So if you're just opting for fruit as a carb, just know that you might need to prioritize a mid-morning snack if that's the only carb source that you're choosing at breakfast. And then with veggies being used for carbs, I'm talking like those starchy veggies. So, like our potatoes or corn, peas or squash, like butternut or acorn squash, not necessarily our leafy greens or tomatoes or carrots. And then for proteins, so aiming to get in enough protein at breakfast is helpful too in making sure, again, that we're able to stay full and satisfied for a longer period of time. Ideally, we want to aim to get at least 15 grams of protein at breakfast. So, just for reference here on some of the proteins listed here as examples, we've got two eggs that equal out to be about 15 grams of protein. A cup of Greek yogurt has about 17 grams of protein. About 4 ounces of smoked salmon has 20 grams of protein. Um, a half cup of cooked beans or cheese would be about 14 grams of protein. And then we've got some other proteins listed here for some ideas as well. We've got things like protein powders, milk, yogurt, meat-filled dumplings, and protein bars. Though I would recommend looking for a protein bar with at least 10 grams of protein per serving if this is the only protein being had at breakfast, because that brings us closer to that 15-gram goal. And then lastly, fat sources. So, some examples of some great dietary fat options that are heart healthy on this list include avocado or guacamole. We've got hummus, nuts, seeds, or seed oils, as well as olive oil or nut butters like peanut or almond butter, smoked salmon, and eggs with the yolk. And there are other fats here listed too, like coconut, cheese or cream cheese, full fat dairy that also contain dietary fat, though these are fats that would technically fall in the more saturated fat category, which aren't as beneficial to our heart health. And we'll discuss this more later on in the presentation. All right, this slide is for those of you that are like, I've never been a breakfast person, but I want to try to add in something. I just am super busy. I don't have time to meal prep, and I never have enough time in the morning either. So I don't know what to do. Enter our grab and go options. So, just a few ideas. You can pick yourself up maybe a pre-made protein drink like this Core Power one has a great amount of protein. This one in particular, 26 grams of protein. Maybe think about adding in a Ziploc bag full of some high fiber cereal mixed in with some nuts just to make sure you're getting enough nutrition in, since sometimes these pre-made protein shakes alone tend to be a little low calorie. We've also got an RX bar and a banana. Again, this combo might be a little low calorie overall, so might just need to prioritize a morning snack or an earlier lunch. Something at breakfast, though, is better than nothing. We've also got this Siggy's yogurt, some fruit, and a granola bar. Again, kind of yogurt acting as our protein in this case, the fruit kind of acting as our fiber, and then the granola bar acting as our carb for that energy. We've also got this Jimmy Dean breakfast sandwich, which again, alone might be a little low calorie, but it does have 18 grams of protein. Maybe with this combo, add an apple, for example, for some extra fiber. We've also got this evil egg and green chili burrito. Again, this might be a little low protein on its own. It has about 12 grams of protein. So that's why the milk is a recommended pairing, since that would provide some additional protein with this meal. Of course, if you're lactose intolerant, you can opt for soy milk since that's pretty comparable protein-wise to cow's milk. Um, and then this Jimmy Dean's Delight turkey sausage bowl has about 3 grams of fiber and 19 grams of protein. So overall, pretty solid grab and go breakfast option. Okay, and now we've got some make ahead options. So if you're one that likes to meal prep on the weekend so that you can then grab and go in the morning, then this slide is for you. And like May mentioned earlier, we did do a meal prepping presentation last month. So if you wanted to hop on the Student Health website and listen to that for some more info on meal prepping, that's a great one. So for these options, we've got porridge or congee or steel cut oats. The example pictured here is a savory porridge. So we've got our eggs acting as the protein and avocado acting as the dietary fat. We've also got some homemade breakfast burritos. So you could add a little bit of black beans for some added fiber and protein along with the eggs that are here. And it looks like we've got, again, some avocado there acting as our heart healthy fat. We've also got some chia pudding. You can use soy or cow's milk or protein powder for the protein component. Maybe top it with some granola for our carb or some fruit maybe. And then, of course, the chia seeds act as that heart healthy fat for us. You could make your own breakfast sandwiches. Maybe think about baking veggies into some eggs for some color. Maybe do them on a sheet pan or a casserole dish, for example. Maybe use cheese or avocado for a fat. You could also make your own breakfast egg muffins and then maybe pair it with a side like a piece of fruit or whole wheat toast for some fiber. You can also do some baked oats or and maybe add some protein to that. If you do regular baked oats, you can pair that with some scrambled eggs or another protein option on the side, maybe some yogurt or something. And then we've got some overnight oats. So you can add Greek yogurt or protein powder, maybe some nuts or seeds on top for that heart healthy fat, maybe some fruit if you want to for that color. Okay. And then this is for our mornings where we might have a little more time to dedicate to breakfast, or maybe we want to impress our friends or roommates in the morning with a breakfast creation. You could do maybe a bagel plus some smoked salmon, maybe some crunchy veggies on top, like cucumbers, onions, capers, tomatoes. So, again, we've got our carbohydrate source done with that bagel. Our fat comes from the cream cheese, maybe some capers, the smoked salmon acting as the protein in this case, and then we've got our color. So that can be a balanced option too. We've got our kimchi fried rice. So the eggs acting as that protein source. Veggies give us that extra fiber. We've got rice serving our carb. So that can be an example too. Yogurt parfaits. So if you're using Greek yogurt or skyr, those tend to be a little higher in protein. So that can serve as our protein option. Top it with some fruit, maybe some ground flaxseed for fiber, maybe chia seeds or nuts, again, for that heart healthy fat. You can also do a breakfast taco situation. So, using corn tortillas, which is a great fiber source, some eggs or beans for our protein. Beans also being super rich in fiber and protein as well. We've also got maybe a whole grain waffle situation for our carbohydrate, adding peanut butter for that heart healthy fat, and then maybe considering doing a side of yogurt for our protein. Peanut butter is kind of one of those food groups where you can kind of have it act as either a protein or a fat, kind of depending on what the meal is and what it calls for. We've also got egg bites, so enter like Starbucks inspired breakfast. A lot of stores have their own brand, so you could do an egg bite situation, maybe some avocado toast on the side. Again, our toast serving as our carb, avocado, that heart healthy fat, and then the eggs being our protein. You can also do some good old-fashioned cereal and milk. If you're using, again, like a cow's milk, soy milk, even like a pea protein milk, I feel like those are all pretty comparable protein sources. So added to that cereal, you've got that fiber from the cereal, that carb that we need for that energy. Maybe the only thing that might be missing would be that fat component. So maybe add some slivered almonds or some seeds or something like that on top, maybe some berries for that color. Um, you can also do a sweet or savory cottage cheese moment. I feel like cottage cheese is getting a spotlight now, but I also know that it's controversial. I personally love myself some cottage cheese toast that's savory. So I'll do a piece of sourdough bread, I'll put some cottage cheese on top, a little drizzle of some like chili oil for my fat. Delicious, delicious, highly recommend. We've also got some dosa. So that's a thin, savory crepe that's made from rice or lentils. You can add eggs to them for some extra protein, maybe some veggies in there, and maybe a fun like dip, whatever would go nice. Um, for that fat. And then for a smoothie, um, again, fruit can serve as our carb slash that color. You can add protein powder or Greek yogurt for protein, chia seeds, or maybe avocado, depending on the smoothie for that heart healthy fat, or maybe nut butter for that dietary fat or extra protein. Um, I always like to say for smoothies, before you're like throwing everything in your smoothie, ask yourself, like, could I eat everything whole that I'm putting into this smoothie? Sometimes it's really easy to add in like all the fruit and all the things to our smoothie. So that's just something I like to reflect on myself as I'm making my smoothies sometimes. All right, shifting gears into more of a lunch and dinner focus. So before we dive into the details of our plate, let's just take a quick look at the overall structure of our plates first. So keeping in mind the foods you see here are just examples. Yes, this plate might look a little Eurocentric in nature, but the basic idea applies for really any type of food or cuisine that you might enjoy. So, just like at breakfast, our plate is divided into four main categories, three to four main categories. We've got our protein, we've got our carbohydrates, and we've got our color or our fruits and vegetables, and then that heart healthy fat. So, with protein, carbs, and color each taking up roughly a third of the plate, and the dietary fat can be found at times with the cooking method in certain dishes or on top or alongside our meal. So for protein, we want to make sure that we're having enough protein just like at breakfast. So an easy way to visualize this is just to kind of use your hand. If it's an animal-based protein like chicken, beef, pork, or fish, this should be about the size of our palm. And this is around 4 to 6 ounces of protein or around 30 grams, depending on the protein that you choose. If it's a plant-based protein like tofu, tempeh, edamame, lentils, or chickpeas, we do need a little bit more volume to ensure we're getting enough protein. So about a fist size or more or less about a cup of plant-based protein is ideal. And again, protein just helps us feel full and satisfied and essentially just serves as the basic building blocks for our cells in our body. Um, Next, we've got carbs. So, carbs also ideally should take up about a third of our plate. And a simple visual for this is to use about the size of a loose fist. We want to focus on a fiber rich carb when we can, like whole grains, wild rice, starchy veggies like potatoes with the skin, corn, or peas. And carbs, as I mentioned, provide us with that also needed energy for our day, our thinking power, and it's also a great way to incorporate more fiber into our day. Color, so our fruits and vegetables. So fruits and veggies should take up, again, about a third to a half of our plate, so around 1 to 2 loose fists per meal. And the best fruit or veggie is the one that you actually like to eat and will include regularly. Don't worry if it's frozen or canned, these are still just as nutritious. Um, and then you've probably heard the phrase eat the rainbow, which is super cheesy, I recognize, but it is true. We'll talk about this in more detail, but different colors provide different vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients that support our health. And then lastly, our dietary fat. So, general amounts of dietary fat to aim for might look like 1 to 2 tablespoons of oil or butter. Maybe this is in salad dressing form. Again, maybe some chili oil drizzled on top of a ramen or cottage cheese toast. Or maybe it's used in the recipe itself, like chicken piccata or a stir fry dish. This could also look like about a quarter cup of a curry made with like a full fat coconut milk, for example. Other dips or spreads like sour cream, cream cheese, tzatziki, hummus, that sort of thing. I'd say about 3-ish tablespoons, about a quarter of an avocado, a quarter-ish of a cup of shredded cheese, small handful of nuts, seeds, olives, coconut flakes. And again, fat along with protein and fiber just helps our body to feel full and satisfied. And as we'll talk about in more detail, also helps with certain absorption of vitamins. And not to mention, they just taste delicious. So having something that tastes good is really important as well. So don't be afraid to include them. That's our basic blueprint. The goal is, of course, to be able to identify all four of these components on our plate. So protein, carb, color, and healthy fat. So in the next few slides, we're going to kind of go through each component in more detail. Okay, let's talk more specifics around proteins. So, protein, like we touched on, is one of those nutrients that your body, again, has to work a little harder to break down, which is a good thing. It helps us, again, stay full, more satisfied for a longer period after meals. Proteins, again, kind of act as the construction material for our body. So, they're constantly kind of being used to build and repair muscles, skin, hair, and nail cells. Basically, your body's kind of always under construction. digestion, and protein kind of helps supply the materials if you think about it like that. Um, and something to just keep in mind is I know protein has been getting quite the spotlight lately. Um, some research suggests that our body can effectively use about 20 to 40 grams of protein per meal on average. And of course, this depends on our body size and individual needs. So, eating more protein than that isn't necessarily wasted. It can be stored in the body as fat for later use, but just note your body can't always use it all at once. So that's why it's best to just make sure that we prioritize having a protein source at each meal kind of spread out throughout the day. So, one way to imagine this is like if you think of your muscles like sponges, like once a sponge is fully saturated and filled with water, it can't really absorb anymore. And so, again, kind of your muscles are sort of similar to that in a way. That's why spreading it out across the day works better than kind of like loading it all into one big meal. So on this slide, you'll see a variety of protein options. We've got animal-based, plant-based, and dairy products, all that all can serve as proteins. You'll notice some proteins are marked with little blue diamonds, and these just tend to be higher in saturated fat. So proteins like certain cuts of beef, pork, lamb, organ meats, processed meats, or fried proteins like orange chicken. Yes, these are all delicious. This doesn't mean that these foods are bad or off limits. It just means eating them more often can potentially raise that LDL or that quote unquote bad cholesterol. That's the type of cholesterol that can impact our heart health over time. Saturated fats can also keep our blood sugar levels elevated for longer periods. And so when our blood sugar stays high for a while, you might notice, maybe feeling extra sluggish, less focused after meals. We might also experience feeling bloated or overly full for a longer period of time due to that slowed digestion that takes place. So, including a mix of proteins works really well. So, ideally, we want to choose leaner proteins like fish, poultry, beans, lentils, or tofu the most often, and then higher saturated fats options like cheese or red meat sometimes. And then keeping in mind too that portion size also plays a big role, also. So, like having a slice of cheese as part of a meal or snack is a lot different than having like a 12-ounce steak every day, for example. And this is where a little bit of nuance comes in. There are still some valuable nutrients, even in some of those higher saturated fat proteins. So, again, it's not about eliminating saturated fats. In fact, it's impossible to completely eliminate saturated fats. So, have the steak dinner with your family or friends, get the fast food after a night out. Just think about mixing it up at the next meal. And one easy way you can maybe practice incorporating more frequent lean proteins might be maybe trying something like meatless Mondays, swapping in beans, lentils, tofu, or eggs, and using that as our primary protein source at meals. Maybe aiming to do that a couple times per week, or finding a fun new recipe to try that kind of highlights those ingredients. So, main protein takeaway protein, no matter the source, provides construction material for the body. Aim for about 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal, and again, kind of spread out throughout the day, and then focus on that variety of proteins. All right, next up, we've got carbs. This is a lot of times the nutrient people have a sometimes a visceral reaction to and can sometimes bring on a little anxiety. So carbs do tend to get painted as the villain, but in reality, they're the body's primary energy source. So something we actually need to prioritize at meals. Carbs are what help fuel our brain and our body. So, including carbs actually can help to reduce brain fog and irritability, and it can help support our body in whatever movement or exercise that we enjoy. So, workouts, walking to classes, lifting, all of it. So, we want the body to use those carbs for energy because that actually can help preserve our lean muscle mass. Carbs also play a big role in feeling satisfied after eating. There's nothing worse than finishing a meal and still feeling like something's missing. You know what I mean? Like nothing's worse than like feeling physically full, but still feeling like it didn't check all of your boxes. And when that happens, your brain kind of starts scanning for the next thing, usually those quick, low effort foods, maybe like chips or cookies, and it's not a willpower issue at all. It's just your body asking for that energy. And another big win with carbs, like I've mentioned, is fiber. So carbs can contribute a major source of fiber in our diets, which most people aren't getting enough of. So we want to ideally aim for about 25 to 38 grams of fiber per day. Fiber, as we know, supports our digestion, being able to poop regularly, our heart health, long-term disease prevention, and again, also helps keeps us feeling full and satisfied for longer periods. We've been focusing a lot on fiber-filled carbs, but even refined carbs still have value. So foods like cereals or sourdough bread may not be high in fiber, but what people might not know is that the flour here in the US is actually fortified. So that means you're actually still getting some nutrients like iron and B vitamins. So it's not necessarily like an all or nothing kind of thing. And on this slide, again, you'll see kind of a wide range of carbohydrate options. Some are more fiber rich, of course, our whole grains, our oats, our quinoa, barley, etc. And then some are lower in fiber. And these are marked with the little orange diamond. So we've got things like white bread, white pasta, pastries, pancakes, waffles, that sort of thing. These lower fiber carbs aren't bad, but because they do digest a little bit more quickly, they can lead to a more rapid blood sugar spike, meaning, again, we just don't stay as full quite as long. This is where that flexibility and balance come in. So sometimes a fiber-rich grain makes perfect sense. Other times, white rice or white pasta is exactly what might let a bold sauce or flavor shine in a particular meal. So just remembering that enjoyment of our meals also matters. Sometimes too, we might be up against an upset stomach and need something that's maybe a little bit easier to digest. So this might be a moment where maybe a white rice or sourdough toast or something like that can be helpful, since we know that, we've got to work a little harder to break down that fiber. Some easy ways, though, to add in more fiber rich carbs, if you feel like this could be an easy way to meet your daily fiber goals, you can try brown or wild rice, quinoa, barley, buckwheat, oats, whole grain breads or pastas, chickpea or lentil pasta, even. Corn tortillas is a great source of fiber, whole grain naan or roti, couscous, or think about keeping the skin on potatoes for that added fiber. So, our major carbohydrate takeaway would be we know that carbs are the body's primary energy source and not something to eliminate. Aim for fiber containing carbs when it's enjoyable and accessible to you for that more sustained energy and some of those health benefits. And know too that some of those refined carbs still have a place in our diet as well. All right, dietary fats. Fats are an essential part of our diet. Like I mentioned before, they help our bodies absorb vitamins like vitamin D, for instance. And again, sounding like a total broken record here, but again, they help keep us feeling satisfied after meals. There are kind of similar to carbs, lots of mixed messages out there around fats. So sometimes it can feel confusing to know what information out there is true. So we're going to kind of focus on two main ideas. Choosing heart healthy fats, which isn't new, we've been talking about that. And then also, too, remembering that some flexibility is okay. So, types of fat, like we've touched on before, we've got both saturated fats and unsaturated fats. So, unsaturated fats are the fats on this list with the little green square next to them. Unsaturated fats are the ones that are considered our heart healthy fats. So, unsaturated or heart healthy fats are the fats that we want to prioritize. And again, they're kind of found in our nuts or seeds, our olives, our avocado oil. Olive or avocado oil, whole olives as well, hummus because it's made with olive oil, and then fattier fish like salmon, mackerel, sardines, and anchovies, and then those whole eggs that are enriched with omega 3s. The benefits of incorporating unsaturated fats or those heart healthy fats is that they actually help to raise our HDL cholesterol, or in other words, the quote unquote good cholesterol. So basically, what it does is it just kind of helps to round up the LDL or the bad cholesterol and return it to the liver so it can be excreted. That's kind of why it's deemed good. And then with saturated fats, these are the fats again with the blue diamond next to them, and we can see them in things like lard, ghee, butter, mayo, tropical oils like coconut or palm oil, full fat dairy, so whole milk yogurt, cream cheese, mascarpone, Parmesan cheddar, paneer, coconut milk cream, and dried coconut. And like we discussed on the protein slide, saturated fats can increase that LDL cholesterol, or again, that quote unquote bad cholesterol, which can keep our blood sugar levels elevated for a longer period. So, again, just some things to remember, like we talked about, impossible to eliminate all saturated fat, and that's okay. We don't need to micromanage every fat. Just aim to add in heart healthy fats like our nuts or seeds, our olive oil, avocado, and fatty fish as often as we can. And then just use saturated fats intentionally where they matter most for your enjoyment. So, if, for example, you really want a lovely buttery pastry, go for it. I think it's about finding your personal non negotiables and remembering just that one meal or snack is not going to derail your health. And then just remembering too that small swaps can help. So, for instance, switching from maybe a whole milk yogurt to a low fat yogurt if that doesn't feel like it would impact your enjoyment of that food too much. So, bottom line, fats are both about our health and our enjoyment. Including heart healthy fats regularly is a goal, and then just enjoy our saturated fats more thoughtfully and mindfully. Okay.
You got 12 minutes, Jenna.
Thank you. Okay, I will speed up a little bit. Fruits and veggies. Okay, we already know that they're packed with vitamins, minerals, fiber, compounds called phytonutrients. So, these are compounds that can help protect ourselves, support our immune system, and can even help our muscles recover after a workout. So, no need to memorize every single nutrient in every food to get the benefits. Simple rule of thumb is to just have a variety of colors. So lots of info here on just like what the different colors bring us nutrient wise. I would say just, key takeaway here is, every fruit and veggie has a unique nutritional profile. Even ones that don't have that bright, vibrant color still have nutritional benefits. The power there is in variety and not ranking foods as better or worse. Oh, and one more thing. Again, kind of similar to our carb slide, you'll notice that some of those uh, fruit items indicated with that orange diamond, those just are, again, like lower fiber fruits. And so our blood sugar tends to be a little bit more impacted with those things. So, again, not to say that we need to avoid them, but just something to be mindful of. Okay, coming away from our hypothetical plate, and we're going to start talking about actual meals that you can build that are easy and include all four of those components. So, to just kind of start with some of the meals above, this first kind of upper left meal looks like some green lentils, which in this meal serves as our protein. We've got some toast on the side, acting kind of as our carbohydrate. Though we've got some color I can see. The only thing that I can't maybe visually see is that heart healthy fat. Maybe we can do a drizzle of like an olive oil on top of our toast or something like that. But overall, pretty balanced. Um, we've also got, a meal up here. We've got it's a rice bowl, maybe with some tofu acting as the protein. We've got our color, dietary fat. Maybe we, cooked this with some sesame oil that's kind of bringing us that heart healthy fat. And then we've got our color. Same thing with this sandwich here. It looks like we've got some deli meat kind of serving as our protein. We've got some color, and then we've got some whole grain bread coming from that there. I'm not visibly seeing a dietary fat, but oh, maybe there's like some cheese, so that can be our dietary fat in this case. We've also got kind of this savory lunch slash like charcuterie board. Again, a snack type lunch can be totally balanced. We've got our carb here coming from the crackers, some great color options, some protein coming from the egg, some salami and some cheese, and then we've got those fats present, some olives, some hummus. And then let's see. We've also got, this wrap here. Again, like we see some garbanzo beans here for our protein, dietary fat coming from the avocado, wrapped in that tortilla, which gives us that carb. So again, another example of something that hits all the things. Okay, quick and easy meals. These are, or I'm sorry, assembly style meals, also quick and easy. This is for those of you that are like, how the heck do I balance my plate when I maybe hate cooking or I don't have time to cook or maybe I don't even have a kitchen. So even if I wanted to, I couldn't cook. We love these assembly style meals, we call them, are basically meals that are all kind of have pre-prepped ingredients that we can easily assemble together. So, for example, up here at the top, you can get yourself kind of a pre-made grain bowl of sorts that gives us that carb. Maybe get some pre-made chicken, like the cilantro lime chicken. Maybe pair it with a little individual size serving of this guacamole to serve as our dietary fat. That could be a great balanced meal option. You can even dress up some frozen meals. So maybe get, this Trader Joe's chicken tikka masala. We've got our protein, our fat, and our carb present. The only thing that might be missing, and something that I feel like these frozen meals tend to like jip us on, is carb or some component usually. So that's why these garbanzo beans are added here. Also, we're missing that color, so you can do like a frozen carrot medley or something. Um, again, leaning into ease, right? So, leaning into some of these pre-made salad kits that gives us that color, that dietary fat. Again, pairing it with a pre-prepped protein of source, and then a microwavable rice option. Again, you've got all the major components there as well. And then just some quick, easy meals, kind of a continuation. You can always get like maybe some turkey burger patties or other sorts of patties. You don't even necessarily have to make a burger. I kind of like having these on hand just to add into like pasta sauces and things like that, or chopped up into like a rice bowl, but you could still make it in sandwich form. Maybe top it with some cheese for our fat, have a little salad kit on the side for that color on some whole grain bread, and you're good to go. Or, maybe we can do some protein containing pasta. If maybe you don't have access to a protein, that can be something to think about. A jarred pasta sauce, kind of giving us that fat component in this vodka sauce, a veggie of choice, whatever you have available, and then maybe some Parmesan cheese for a little extra protein, a little extra fat in that case. Um, yeah, I honestly love these roasted potatoes from Trader Joe's. I'll use them like to as a base for like air fryer salmon. And in this case, they're kind of showcased as like a breakfast inspired meal with some of these ingredients. And then kind of like I mentioned, just real quickly, you can always upgrade your meals. So, I'm pretty sure all of us have things like instant ramen in our pantries or like cans of beans. And it's like, what the heck do I do with all of these? You can always kind of dress them up to make them more balanced. So, for example, if you've got a box of mac and cheese, I mean, you've got your carb, you've got your fat, you even got like a little bit of protein, but maybe we add some sort of color like a broccoli, some chicken to get all of our needs met that way. Same with like our instant ramen. So, instant ramen on its own, we've kind of just got our carb present. But if you add some frozen edamame or some tofu, you have an easy protein source. Again, maybe like a sprinkle of sesame seeds for our dietary fat on top to kind of give us all the things. Frozen pizza on its own, right? We might be missing that color component. So maybe just pair it with a salad kit on the side to get all of our needs met. Quesadilla, don't get me wrong, this is delicious. But have it be a little bit more balanced. Maybe we're doing some beans and some veggies inside just for a little extra protein, that fiber, and that color. Okay, quickly on snacks. We know the benefits of snacking really help support our blood sugar, kind of like we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, like really trying to ensure that we're eating some meal or snack every 3 to 4 hours. So it can really help support our energy throughout the day. They can also actually reduce the likelihood of late night overeating, and can help over time kind of regulate our appetite and mindful eating just by reducing those excessive hunger cues right before meals. 'Cause sometimes when that happens, we have a tendency to overeat in those moments. And again, it just opens up those eating opportunities so it's easier to meet daily protein and fiber goals. Um, especially with like workout recovery and energy, sometimes having a snack before we move our bodies is really helpful. So, similar to our balanced meals, ideally our snacks should have at least two different components out of the four we've talked about today. So, a balanced snack typically has a fiber rich carb plus a protein or a fat. So, for example, this apple and string cheese example, that apple gives us that fiber. Plus, a cheese stick has that protein or fat component. So, that would be an example of a great snack. We've also got, this little snack pack. We've got some dry roasted edamame, which gives us that fiber, that protein. We've got some nuts in there again for the protein and fat, and then plus some pretzels for a carb. We've got some tuna packets here. This gives us that protein. Maybe have it with some crackers. That gives us that carb. Or, you could do a protein and a fat together. That might be an RX bar example. And then same with our like chips and guacamole plus our bell peppers here. Again, we've got our carb from the chips, fat from the avocado or the guac, and then our color component. And then this is just another list of some snack options separated into carb, protein, and fat options. So again, just choosing 2 to 3 food group components to build your balanced snack is ideal. So again, in the carb section, a lot of these are rich in fiber. So we've got whole fruit, we've got popcorn, chips, pretzels, veggies, edamame, breads, crackers. Protein options can be anything from deli meat to beef jerky to smoked salmon or tuna, fresh edamame, even yogurts, cheeses, protein drinks, and bars, that sort of thing. And then fats again, we've got cheese, hummus, guac, tzatziki sauce, avocado, olives, all the nuts, all the seeds. So again, kind of choosing at least two different components to pair together for our snack is best. All right. Summary here. So we talked about normal eating. Eating ideally should be flexible, balanced, not perfect. We want our eating guided by hunger cues rather than kind of rigid diet-based rules. Balanced breakfast, so starting our day with protein, fiber-rich carbs, and a healthy fat helps stabilize our blood sugar, supports our focus, and kind of prevents that mid-morning crash. Balanced meals. So at meals, think about building our plate with protein, fiber-rich carbs, healthy fats, and color from fruits and veggies. And then smart snacking. Snacks work best when they're balanced as well. So pairing those macronutrients like we talked about, like protein with fat or carbs with protein, helps keep our energy steady and our appetite regulated. And then our last biggest takeaway, you don't need to eat perfectly to eat well. So, setting those small, realistic choices made consistently, that matters far more than any single meal does. So, finding those health promoting habits that actually fit into your life is ultimately what matters most. So, no such thing as perfect eating. That's what I got. Thank you so much.
All right, Jenna, thank you so much for that presentation. That was awesome. I just want to quickly remind everyone this was the second webinar in our nutrition seminar series. And so we do have 2 more upcoming webinars. Next month, we'll be doing one on mindful eating. And then the month after that, we'll be doing one on label reading. Just wanted to open it up to see if anyone had any questions. We do have one question so far in the chat that I will go ahead and ask you, Jenna, but if anyone else thinks of anything that they're curious about, feel free to add that to the chat. So the question we have is there such a thing as an unhealthy food canceling out the benefits of a healthy food in your meal?
Hmm, that's a good question. Um, so my philosophy, and feel free, May and Elizabeth, if you wanted to jump in. Um, my philosophy really is there's no such thing as a good food or a bad food. Food is just food. It's neutral, and I think there really is a place for all foods in our diet. I mean, of course, kind of like we talked about, there are some, foods that kind of provide us those added health benefits like fiber-rich foods and like proteins and heart-healthy fats. But even if we were to add in a fun food like, sodas or like a pastry or cookie, I think it can absolutely fit into our diet because those types of foods tend to bring us joy, and that's important to think about too. So that's kind of what I would say to that. If you have anything more to add? Yeah, so not about canceling it out. I think it's more about, that addition, nutrition by addition, if you will.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Jenna, do you have a favorite weeknight meal, like a go-to meal that you often gravitate towards when you're not having much time, you want something really easy?
That's a good question. I love honestly a like a steamed dumpling over maybe some microwavable rice. I go to Costco and I get those like cheater kind of microwavable rice packets that I can just pop in the microwave for a minute. I can either like pan fry my little dumplings or steam them. Add maybe a frozen veggie, whatever I have on hand, whether that's like broccoli or carrots or whatever, or if it's like a mixed salad. Um, Maybe a little chili oil, some sesame seeds on top to kind of zhuzh it up. That's a good go-to. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. This is controversial. I love a breakfast dinner. I feel like it brings me a lot of comfort, and I feel like it's just so easy to sometimes just be like, okay, I'm just gonna make myself some avocado toast and have some eggs. It's like breakfast number two. I know that bothers some people, but that's like a comfort for me. How about you all? Do you have any go-tos?
I'm gonna say breakfast for dinner is one for me. I will often do breakfast tacos with black beans,
Mhm.
eggs, cheese, some zucchini, bell pepper, and some
Mhm.
guacamole. And that for me is a favorite and really easy.
Yeah, so good.
Right. Well, if no one else has any
Uh,
other questions, oh, go ahead.
yeah, I was curious. So I know when you're eating, it usually takes your body like a little while to process when it gets full, when you've had enough nutrients. Um, and I know there is like the solution of, oh, you could just measure everything before you eat it. But I feel like for us, we're pretty busy. It might not be easy to like always have a food scale present. So do you have any strategies for kind of assessing like how many nutrients you've been taking in and sort of knowing like when that point has been reached,
hmm That's such a good
especially when you're
question.
just grabbing a meal to go.
Yeah, totally. I know it can be super hard to kind of engage in more mindful eating practices when you're having to eat on the go and kind of eat in a rushed place. Um, I would say, kind of following our like general like portion guidelines, to the best of our ability, making sure that we're, trying to get in enough nutrition, like, uh, do we have a loose fist of our carb? Do we have about a palm size of an animal-based protein? Do we have, our fat? And then it might not always be possible to to find a quiet place to like eat our meal very mindfully. But sometimes too, sometimes what I do is, if I'm feeling kind of like in a fight or flight or like kind of feeling more stressed, like I will take a minute to like just take some deep breaths and just as a way to kind of remind my body like, hey body, everything's good. Because sometimes if we're, stressed or anxious, we tend to eat a lot faster and it's a lot easier to overeat in those instances. Sometimes we're not even really like tasting our food. So that's another thing that could be helpful too. Like, even if you're eating on the go, like, I know this sounds lame, but like, try to even like tell yourself, like, okay, what am I tasting? Like, okay, I have a burrito bowl. Like, I taste, like, spicy salsa. Okay, spicy. Okay, I have like cheese on there. That's savory or that's hot actually because it's melted. And just kind of like force your brain to be present. And that can really help to kind of connect our brain and our body back together so that those hunger fullness cues kind of align. But I hear you, it's like so hard to do that. If you wanted to join our next presentation, we're going to talk about mindful eating in more detail. So that's actually a great lead up question. I don't know if you guys have anything more to add, May or Elizabeth, to that.
Yeah, I'll also add too, I think the slowing down is really important just to help our body naturally notice when we start to feel full, when the stomach starts to stretch, it sends a signal to the brain, hey, we're starting to feel full, stop eating. When we eat really fast, we kind of outpace our body's natural mechanism for sensing fullness. And so some, strategies that are helpful are eating with a non-dominant hand or making sure you're putting your utensils down in between bites. Just to really help kind of slow your body down. If slowing down isn't always an option, another strategy is halfway through your meal, just putting your utensils down and doing a general check-in and kind of asking myself, how full am I? How much left do I want to eat? Sometimes taking 5 minutes to really figure it out. Sometimes if I'm out at a restaurant with friends and I'm halfway through my meal, I'll get up, take a break, maybe go to the restroom, and that gives me that moment to just kind of check in with my body and really assess how I'm feeling. And then I can kind of decide, okay, you know what? I am still hungry. I want to eat some more of my meal, or actually, like, I'm feeling pretty good. Maybe a couple more bites and I'm good. So I think just kind of checking in. There's something we often use with patients called the hunger fullness scale, that you can use, before you start eating, halfway through your meal, towards the end of your meal, to just get a better sense of what fullness feels like for you.
Those are good tips.
Yeah, great question.
Mm-hmm.
About 2 more minutes. Any other last minute questions? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate it. Loved all the great questions, and we hope to see you next month for our next webinar.
Thanks, everyone.